Hello. Today I will be featuring a ship I haven't really featured in a very long time, and that is the Dunkerque. Now, it's hardly a secret that I dislike the Dunkerque, but this game is a pretty good example of how to play it. The matchmaking is naturally awful. I'm the only tier 6 battleship in the entire game. I'm faced up against mostly tier 8s, 2 or 3 tier 6s, and the rest are tier 7s. So just a horrible matchmaking to begin with, which is pretty common. Also, my DDs are going up the 10 line, and the rest of my ships are turning around and hiding somewhere in our base behind the islands. So the initial look is not that promising. Now, the Dunkerque is a ship I don't recommend, and it's a ship I don't really like. But of course, not liking doesn't mean that you can't still somewhat perform in it. Now, the reason why, of course, the Dunkerque isn't really one of my favorite ships is the unreliability of the guns. In fact, something that I value greatly in World of Warships is reliable guns. I like being rewarded. When I see an enemy player make a mistake, I like being able to punish that mistake. I like being rewarded for good aim, for good predictions, and so forth. And the issue with the Dunkerque is that it has 1.7 Sigma and it only has 8 guns. Now, it also has the lowest caliber guns of any tier 6, but the penetration of the AP is actually surprisingly good because it has such good muzzle velocity. It has something like 850 or 870 meters per second on the AP. So the penetration, even though the caliber is the lowest, is not bad. The problem is though, of course, since it's low caliber guns, the damage is lower as well. So as a result, the Dunkerque has the lowest AP DPM of all tier 6 battleships and the lowest alpha as well. So this is no damage monster, and thanks to the Sigma, this is no superbly accurate ship either. So there are some... The guns are really the ultimate reason why I'm not a fan of this ship, much like I didn't like the Gneisenau, even though the Gneisenau is a fairly strong ship, but it only has 6 guns with German dispersion, and the unreliable guns automatically make me dislike the ship. How do you play the Dunkerque though, especially in a game like this, when you're up against tier 8? Well, first of all, a common mistake many Dunkerque captains do is they think it is a Yamato. They think it is a North Carolina. They think it is a ship capable of parking nose in and duking it out. Now, the Dunkerque can't even do this against tier 6s. Against tier 8s, it will get punished even harder. It's one of the most lightly armored ships in battleships in the game. It has 225 millimeters of citadel armor, which is basically nothing, and the bow is 25 millimeters, which means, well, 380 millimeter, meaning even Warspites and Bayerns at your own tier can overmatch it. So against tier 7, tier 8, everything can overmatch it. So you're not going to be tanking anything in this thing, and as soon as you start parking nose in and thinking you're a tanky battleship, that's usually when people tend to get punished and people tend to get killed, and it's just overall not a fun experience for any captain attempting to do that. So one of the key points of this is keeping on the move. I don't mind grounding here at all. If you were worried, I intentionally sped up the ground because since there is no damage, no penalty for grounding, it's better to ram into an island at full speed because it stops all your velocity, and then you can quickly reverse and reposition. The reason, of course, I got into cover here was I wanted to get into cover from all the fire, and I wanted to reposition. Now, how do you play it? You keep on the move. You have to keep on the move. Now, this ship is very much played like a battle cruiser. You cannot take on a enemy battleship who has any idea what he's doing at long ranges like this. You can't tank the way he can tank. You are not capable of doing that with your armor. So what you want to do is do these hit and run type of tactics. You pop out, you fire off a volley, you kind of turn away into cover, and you keep doing this kind of playstyle constantly. And that's actually where two of the strengths, the few strengths this ship has, come in handy, and these are the ones you should be using. First of all, the speed. The Dunkerque has 29.5 knots of speed, which for tier 6 is very fast for a battleship. And you need to be using this speed to your advantage, using it to dive in, take those shots and dive out. A second advantage it has is good turret traverse. I think with expert marksman that I run, you get the turret traverse down to 31 seconds for a 180-degree turret turn, which is pretty close to what you get on cruisers. So being fast and having these fast turning turrets means that you can pretty quickly take your shots at your target and hopefully get out in time. Now there are risks involved in this. You are pretty much tied with the Mutsu for the absolute largest tier 6 battleship. This is a long large ship with a large citadel. So when you make these turns, you always take the risk of being citadel, being punished heavily. So you have to keep that in mind as well when you do these moves. But ultimately, one of my main lessons when it comes to playing the Dunkerque is never stop in the open. It's one thing if you stop near island cover, where you can kind of get back into cover, you can reverse behind the island and in that way disengage. But sailing around, being caught in the open, sitting still is a death sentence. Here I'm turning away. I slowed down behind the island and started my turn, and now as I turn out I accelerate, hopefully to avoid most of the shells. You might notice, by the way, when you do moves like this, or in general when you show yourself, all high tier battleships will take shots at you, because they know just as well as you know that this is a squishy ship. You won't be tanking any shells. Don't expect to see many shells bounce. Especially against higher tier battleships, you can expect penetrations from pretty much every angle, so you need to limit the time you spend, and most of the time when you are eating the shots, they should be when you are already disengaging. Now, amusingly, one of the strengths of the ship, which is having all the guns on the forward part of the ship, is actually a bit of a weakness when it comes to how the ship needs to be played, because you kind of want to be kiting away and moving away from the enemy whenever you use them. And of course, having both the guns in the front isn't exactly conductive for this type of gameplay. In fact, the turret arrangement easily fools the average player into thinking that you should be sitting bow in, and there's the French memes, oh lululul, reverse, you should be reversing, putting up your white flag and blah 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 blah. But if you think you can park in front of any sort of firepower and start reversing into cover or reversing while firing, you're just gonna get killed. They will easily punish you through the nose. They will easily punish the massive superstructure. HE damage also does massive damage to you. You are a battle cruiser. You're not really a battleship. You are a battle cruiser. Are there ships who are better at playing this kind of style? Yes. In fact, one of my favorite ships in the game, the Scharnhorst. I play it very similarly, but unlike the Dunkerque, the Scharnhorst can tank nose in very confidently. It's a supremely tanky battle cruiser, and unlike the Dunkerque, it actually gains bonuses for having such low caliber guns. It has a very fast reload, whereas the Dunkerque sadly only has a 28-second reload, and of course you understand if you have the lowest AP damage, the lowest AP alpha, all of these things also having the same reload as the other ships isn't really that much fun. But the penetration is good. That shouldn't be underestimated. Even though the caliber is low, the penetration is great. That was at 11k volley, which is a fifth of your HP, and you notice that I was angled trying to eat it on my broadside armor. But against high tiers, you really can't expect to tank much. So of course, now that I've gained their attention, I'm already turning away, already disengaging, because they're all gonna start shooting me as soon as they see me, for all the reasons that I have outlined in this commentary. So, keynotes to take away from how to play the Dunkerque: always stay on the move. You saw that it hit the broadside from that kind of angle, it still punched through and did massive damage, and that is fundamentally one of the greater weaknesses of the ship. But the speed, acceleration, these are all good things, and we're gonna keep using it. We're gonna keep on the move. I'm constantly using these islands in front of me to break line of sight cover. Oh, this Atago is launching some horrible torps here. I already want to turn out because I don't want to be giving full broadside to these turrets, but I have to make sure that I don't actually eat these torps as I turn out. At close ranges like this, well, only 4 hits, only half my shells hit, but you can see the penetration on close ranges especially is very powerful. And that's why if you do manage to rush an enemy battleship, and you can rush him nose in and just punish him, you can do a lot of damage. The problem is, of course, he can do the same to you if he hits you in the nose, since he'll be able to overmatch it, and the Dunkerque nose is not a small one, it's quite easy to hit. Oh, Leander. Let's see if this Persian actually favors me for once. Leander popping up this close and broadside, and this Persian does actually play ball with us for once, and we managed to get a devastating strike on the Leander. I turn instantly though, I want to dodge these turret shells as much as possible. Oof, still eat a big chunk of damage, but the turret is sailing into cover, and I'm gonna be sailing into cover as well. As I said, never stay in the open, never take anything resembling fair fights, especially against higher tiers. You do not have the tankiness. You cannot withstand that. So you can see I've already put the island between me and the turrets, and now it's just me and the Graf Spee, and this is the kind of fight I will happily take, because he doesn't have the firepower to really punish me. But once again, 1.7 Sigma makes life quite hard if it doesn't play ball. Another downside, of course, with having this 25mm armor all over the ship is the fact that HE deals a lot of damage to you. You are vulnerable to HE, let's make no mistake there. But that's one of the other reasons why you don't ever want to be a stationary target. It's very easy to HE spam a Dunkerque to death. In fact, if I play a cruiser, Dunkerques that park nose in and think they are tanky are one of my favorite targets, because you're able to deal so much damage to them. And even when reversing, you have to remember this is a massive ship. This is tied for the biggest tier 6 battleship. It's pretty much the same size as the Mutsu. It's a big damn ship, and there's a lot of superstructure and just a lot of area to hit, which makes it the prime target for any sort of cruiser spam. As you can see here, I blew my repair a bit greedily there because I got into cover, and it might come back to bite me a fair bit here if they get a second fire on me. But I'm already sailing away, I am kiting away, I'm disengaging, which is what you need to do. The Graf Spee was so eager to shoot me, so eager to try to kill me, that he actually got punished from the Bismarcks from the other side, 2 tunnel visioned on me. At this point I'm out of range from the Pensacola, and my repair is coming back up, so I shouldn't have any issues surviving this. But you saw how quickly and how easily they got double fires on me. This is an easy ship to hit. So remember, whenever your repair is on cooldown, you want to be disengaging actively. You don't want to be pushing the envelope, pushing the fight in those situations. Now, there is a DD on my left, there is a Benson on my left, and one of the things you can use is the speed, which is one of the strengths, once again, of the ship. You can use it, surprisingly, to ambush and surprise enemy DDs when they don't expect it. I don't use the rudder shift, but even without the rudder shift, you have a 14-second rudder shift, which is for a battleship pretty good. And you can see me use it here to quickly turn in. And the idea here is, once again, I'm using islands as cover to not be spotted. The idea here is to surprise this Benson or Shiratsuyu, most likely the Benson though, by being so much closer to him than he would expect. He's running RPF, so he does know that I am here, but he is already within spotting range because, once again, I am so fast. By the time he's actually turned away and fleeing, I'm already within 5 kilometers of him. And the secondaries open up, but the secondaries have very awkward angles, and you need to be giving far too much broadside to be able to efficiently use them. The secondaries in general are not recommendable. I expect to launch torps, so I'm already turning right, expecting the incoming torpedo volley. And as I said that, the torpedoes are arriving, but thanks to my turn, I'm able to slip between them, and I finish off the Benson, which is always nice. Ideally, I would have killed him with the first volley, but once again, dispersion is what dispersion is. You cannot count on it in that way. Only 2 minutes left on this game, and you've noticed the playstyle. You notice I've never really been stationary in the ship. The only time I've been stationary was when I grounded behind the island in complete cover. That was the only time I've been stationary. The rest of the time, pretty much full speed at all times, moving, never giving them an easy target, never being that never pretending like I was a battleship, because that's not what the Dunkerque is. It might be labeled as one, people might call it one, but it certainly doesn't play like one. And if you attempt to play it like a battleship, you're gonna have a very hard time in dealing with, especially being up tiered like I am here against multiple tier 8s. I pop my fighter plane for additional spotting information on incoming torpedoes, and I try to close the distance. I tell them don't die and we should be fine, and honestly the Pensacola looks like he is dying, so I'm gonna see if I can push in a bit. I was hoping I would be able to shoot and remain undetected, but because of the smoke between me and the turrets and because everyone else is outside of range, but this already gives me some information, namely that the Shiratsuyu has left the smoke, and that's why I got spotted. I do run Concealment Expert on this ship, and that is the ability to disengage when needed is so important on this ship, and running a Concealment Expert of course synergizes with that kind of playstyle, actively disengaging. He is staying angled against me, so rather than try to defeat armor I know I cannot defeat, I switch to HE and start using that instead, hoping to get some fires going on him. My first volley lands on his hull, so 5 shatters, no damage with the HE. I'm hoping to of course hit his superstructure to deal that damage. Sadly, these torps are unavoidable. That's the problem, of course. When you push in, you have less reaction times for incoming torpedoes. I do land a fire on him, and it looks like with a very 4 seconds left, I am in fact going to die. So I'm usually, when I told my team not to die, I'm the guy who actually runs in and dies. But at this point, it of course didn't matter anymore, since the game was already over. So, victory. A lot of effort and only 411k credits. That's a problem, of course, with being tier 6 premium. You don't earn the same kind of credits you would do in a tier 8, 7, and 9, whatever. 115k damage, not really that impressive, but then again, you gotta consider the opposition I was facing. Only tier, well, they had no tier 6 battleships, it was all higher tiers, and I managed to beat all the tier 8s and tier 7s on my own team and top the scoreboard, which is of course very satisfying, especially when doing it in a ship that I don't really consider to be that good because of all the weaknesses. But just because I don't consider the ship to be that good doesn't mean that it doesn't have some strengths you can play it to, this being of course the speed and the turret traverse. The issue is naturally that the strengths it has aren't as good as some of the other strengths the other tier 6 ships have. For example, Bayern Warspite, the ability to overmatch and penetrate armor that the Dunkerque cannot, and in the case of the Fuso and New Mexico, the massive 12-gun broadsides. But this is how you should be playing it, especially when upmatched or up tiered, which happens extremely often ever since 0.5.9, and tier 6s are of course one of the most vulnerable tiers to this constant up tiering. And looking at here, damage upon your spotting, 21k, considering how much you move around, you do tend to rack it up. More important, of course, potential damage, 1.8 million in tier 8 matchmaking. This shows you, of course, how many shells were fired my way and how much of it I actively dodged to make sure, because you won't be bouncing a lot of shells in this thing. So this is more about how much damage you have been able to dodge. Damage received, 97,000, which is pretty good for this ship, and of course damage dealt is going to be pretty much solely AP. If you have some battleships that are parked nose in and they refuse to move, or they're reversing or whatever, that's when the HE comes in handy, because the fire chance is good on it. But once again, The problem you have is having only 8 guns and questionable dispersion, which means actually getting those fires started, regardless of how good the fire chances per individual shell, is not that consistent. But it does have its purpose, and that's mostly for angled higher tier battleships. Anyway, this was my Dunkirk commentary. Let me move on to my recommended build for this ship. Right, as usual, let's start off with the modules even. Not much to discuss here as it's a premium. Priority-wise, I would take the damage control, followed by healing, and finally fighter plane. I don't bother with the spotting aircraft because, well, the accuracy at long ranges, especially at ranges where you might need spotting aircraft, isn't really recommendable, and you don't really need it to deal with smoked up Royal Navy cruisers, because thanks to your speed you can actually outrun any smoked up cruiser pretty easily and get out of their range without eating too much additional damage. Also, the catapult fighter gives you that additional spotting and some help against any possible carrier strikes, even if it is a fairly weak help. Upgrade wise, main armaments mod 1, as your guns are already quite vulnerable and you want to make them a bit tankier. Reduce dispersion on these main guns, and damage control 1 and 2. Now, steering gears is an option, but ultimately it really only reduces your rudder shift time to about 11 seconds, a bit more than 11. And personally, I felt like I could get away with running damage control mod 2 instead to reduce all the fire damage, which you will absolutely guaranteed be eating. Captain perks wise, first priority, preventive maintenance, once again, gun power. Second, adrenaline rush, your turret traverse is already quite decent, followed by superintendent for an additional heal, concealment expert, and we need to put at least one. We need to get at least one 4-point perk into AA, and manual AA is really the best option because, well, your AA is already pretty garbage, but your low range AA is absolute garbage. Your long range is, well, not that good, but at least with manual AA and focus firing the planes, you have some sort of AA power and you're some sort of threat to the planes, meaning they can just hover around you forever and line up that perfect drop, but they will indeed start getting shot down if they try to go for the perfect drops on you, and that's really the sole reason for getting manual AA. Once you have manual AA, I would get the expert marksman, get that turret traverse even lower since it's one of its strengths, and these guns kind of need the help. Also, if you do have a 19-point captain, I would get vigilance as the last 3 points, as getting advanced torpedo protection is quite valuable as the torpedo protection is only 27%. Anyway, that was my Dunkirk commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.